Previously, on Night of the Serpent, their companions frozen in their bedrolls, awake and aware, but immobile. 13 sits bolt upright and moving mechanically begins to march their way out of the camp. Only Locke and Vorn are unaffected by this strangeness, and while the shield guardian stands immobile, the tabaxi ranger bounces around, unsure how to help. 13 calls upon Eku, and the coatl is able to neutralize the effect. Until, a moment later, it returns. Eku neutralizes it again. It returns again. Soon, Eku has exhausted every ounce of their healing powers, and still 13 continues marching their way out of the camp and into the night. Meanwhile, the tabaxi's companions struggle with this effect themselves. Using all their effort, they manage to squeeze out a little bit of functionality, struggling against this enchantment as hard as they can. Hek follows after 13, intent on guarding them. Gûlwyf is about to join them, but instead decides to stay behind and guard the Eye of Zoltek with Vorn and Locke. With no other recourse, 13 and Hek, who even when reduced in speed can still keep up with the marching tabaxi, walk a short distance away from camp. The previous night, they'd, led by Locke, encamped high on the walls of a plateau, with a sheer cliff to one side and a frightening precipice to the other. Eventually, they come to a shoulder of rock, and 13's body, against their will, begins to squeeze into a crevasse that leads deeper into the plateau. Hek is about to follow when he hears something odd. A shift of stones from up above, a single solitary hoot. And then he is mobbed by a familiar swarm of flying monkeys. At the same time, a smaller pack of flying monkeys descends upon the camp. They make for Vorn, attempting to tear the Eye of Zoltek from the shield guardian's back, but are quickly dispatched by Locke and Gûlwyf. Hearing the sounds of battle further down the canyon, they move as quickly as they can, which is not very quickly for the struggling Gûlwyf. Hek blasts away at the swarm of flying monkeys, claiming one after another, but in turn, the monkeys take hold of him and begin to carry him out over the precipice. He doesn't seem too concerned about this, but he should be. Meanwhile, 13 wriggles their way into the crevasse, and there, in a tiny crevice, confronts the party's old nemesis, none other than Nanny Pu'Pu. Inside the tiny crevice deep in the cliffside, Nanny Pu'Pu has arranged a ritual for 13's welcome. The small cave is lit by dozens of phosphorescent beetles that cling to the walls. An eldritch symbol is traced in snakeskin on the ground, and at its three corners are three gourds brimming with blood. A flying monkey lies in a drugged state in the center of the symbol, and 13, their body not their own, flops down and lies prone beside the monkey, Nanny Pu'Pu kneeling over the both of them. Outside, Hek blasts the remaining monkeys and prepares to swoop in to 13's rescue, but then his body goes rigid, his wings lock up, and he begins to plummet towards the canyon floor. He falls almost all the way to the ground, 100 feet down, but then he regains his autonomy, beats his wings, and attempts to fly back up, only to have his body go rigid again and fall all the way back down. Inside the cavern, Nanny Pu'Pu cuts open the sleeping monkey with a dagger, and taking a handful of gore, attempts to cast some foul hex over 13. Though they resist the first attempt, 13 can feel the necrotic energy tugging at Eku inside them, as though attempting to tear coatl and tabaxi asunder. Outside, Hek falls and falls and falls and does not regain his autonomy. Instead, he crashes to the canyon floor, and unrested from the knoll battle and wounded from his scrap with the flying monkeys, he falls unconscious, unknown to his companions and unseen at the bottom of the 100-foot cliff. Nanny Pu'Pu takes another handful of gore and tries the hex again, but is still unable to pull Eku from 13. And that's when Locke and Gûlwyf arrive. Attacking the Night Hag in concert, they manage to disrupt her concentration long enough for 13 to gain some of their autonomy back. With a successful Arcana check, they are able to determine that it is the three gourds that are the focus of the ritual, and, when each is knocked over, their companions regain their freedom from the curse. Seeing that she's once again defeated, Nanny Pu'Pu goes invisible and attempts to scamper back through the crevasse. The heroes give chase, but crafty as ever, she nonetheless escapes into the night. While Locke, the best tracker in the group, follows Nanny Pu'Pu's trail, 13 and Gûlwyf search for Hek. They discover tracks and dead monkeys, evidence of the scuffle, and peering over the precipice, spot the crumpled form of the aarakokra at the bottom of the canyon. With all their tabaxi speed, 13 scrambles down the cliffside, leaps to Hek's rescue, and casts Cure Wounds just before he bleeds out. Hek is saved. bent on vengeance, the party cannot find Nanny Pu'Pu. They do discover, however, inside each of the bloody gourds, a single hair, or in Heck's case, a feather. They recall the strange itching sensation from several nights previously, and conclude that Pu'Pu must have crept into their camp while they slept and plucked out the fetishes. In the morning they continue, Locke leading them over the wastes. Higher and higher they climb, and eventually they reach the summit of the dusty plateau, and can see the ruins of Mambala at a great distance. The next day, as they climb back down through the rolling scree, they hear something, hissing and moaning, clawing and scrabbling from thousands of throats and hands, and it's coming from far below. Hordes and hordes of undead pour through the canyon below them in a roiling mass. High above, and safe from any attack, they watch in horror, Gûlwyf in particular, as hundreds of zombies career away down a branching canyon. On the third day, they finally come to the edge of the wasteland, and stretching out before them for miles and miles, they see the Aldani Basin, trackless swamp in every direction. A keen eye spots a floating speck against the cloud's cover, a tiny black dot, which Locke tells them is the heart of Ubtao. And that's where we stopped. That's where we ended the session. So how did it go? Oh, it was a thrilling session. Truly a thrilling session, in more ways than one. The party was genuinely frightened and confused and frustrated for most of the session. Really just trying to figure out, and had no idea what was going on right up until that final reveal. And I fed off of that. Normally it's the kind of thing that I would try to avoid, but in this case I sort of rationalized that because they basically fumbled their first touch with this particular monster, that gave me license to be a little bit more unfair. And I kind of enjoyed that. So let me give you some context. Several sessions ago, one of the random encounters that came up on my table was a night hag. I think in the book it's meant to be one of the Sohn sisters who comes and tries to steal something like a hair or a toenail or whatever. But it made more sense for our campaign that it would be Nanny Pu'Pu, since that's what Nanny Pu'Pu was after to begin with. So she was invisible, but I had, there was a chance, but if someone rolled a high enough perception, they would hear someone crashing around in the brush. But nobody did hear Nanny Pu'Pu. So Nanny Pu'Pu actually got the 3 fetishes that they wanted, and I tried to rationalize to myself, what would she do with them? What is her goal? And I liked the idea that if she is a worshiper of Dendar, and the Dendar's whole thing is that it eats other Quaddles, then maybe it would try to tear Eku away from 13 and basically offer Eku as a tribute or a gift to Dendar. The mechanic for it was basically that the players are dominated essentially. They have no control over their bodies, and Nanny Pu'Pu was giving them distinct orders. So Nanny Pu'Pu was telling Heck and Gûlwyf just to do nothing, to lie still, and then is trying to steer 13 towards her. I gave the players constitution saves to try to overcome this effect, and if they did, they were under basically the slowed condition. So the best case scenario here is that they're at half speed, they can take reactions, they can take action or bonus action, but not both. Basically the effects of the slow spell, which is really a nasty spell. It's much worse than any one condition. And so the party is understandably frustrated and freaked out and doesn't have any idea where this is coming from. Especially once Eku burned through several of her healing powers, they kind of felt like, well, there's no choice, we have no way to get out of it. Again, not the kind of thing I would normally do, but had they made those early perception checks several days ago, they could have maybe seen this coming. God, it's so crazy to me that Nanny Pu'Pu, of all characters, ended up being this reoccurring antagonist. I'm gonna have to find a way to bring her back for a third, and I presume final time. I might skip an arc, since she's appeared here. I might wait, let them do the Ubtao to Kirsa Ball arc without any sign of her, and then bring her in again once they've hopefully forgotten about her a little bit. Heck was once again challenged. Heck came as close as he has ever come to dying. Extremely close. Both 13 and Gûlwyf have been right on death's door before, but I've never managed to get Heck, and it was delightful. There was a good chance, honestly. We all thought he was going to die. The way we described it in the moment, we're like, what are Heck's last thoughts? We really didn't think there was any chance they were going to find him. But God, what ignominious maybe, but what a poetic death that he falls to his death. Right, this character who has spent the entire campaign hovering above everything and basically untouchable dies from falling damage? Oh, beautiful. Alas, they rescued him right before I thought he was going to be slain, but that's fine. I don't want to kill Heck, but I do want Jay to realize that he is just as mortal as the rest of the players, and just because he's a power gamer, just because he made an optimized character, doesn't mean that I can't get him if I want to get him. The other thing is that right on the heels of Vorn dominating the Null encounter, it was nice to have an encounter where Vorn was pretty much useless. 13 very rarely got to take an action, and when they did, it didn't seem worth it to have Vorn take a bonus action when Vorn couldn't get into the crevasse, couldn't fight the flying monkeys, a bunch of different things. Vorn was basically useless in this fight. And I think that's interesting that Vorn can be a really huge asset in certain encounters, but sometimes it's just kind of a waste of space in others. Besides the encounter with Nanny Pu'Pu, the rest of the session was pretty uneventful. It was really nice to tease that zombie horde for a second. We're going to see more of that again soon. Next session will be another trailblazing one. The party's going to move back through the Aldani Basin, and we're just going to kind of go back to the standard random encounters and exploring the jungle. I'm looking forward to maybe getting a little bit more into Locke as a character. I think that's where we're going to kind of see some of Locke's history, and specifically Locke's history with 13, because there is one. And that was the session. The triumphant return of Nanny Pu'Pu. I mean, she lost, she ran away, but it didn't feel like she lost. The party came very, very close to disaster. How do you think the session went? Do you have any questions about Tomb of Annihilation or the way I'm running the campaign? Do you ever feel the need to be unfair with your party? You know, to take away some of their toys and put them at a disadvantage that they can't really overcome no matter how hard they try? Let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm the only evil bastard here. We'll be back next week with another episode of Previously On. I'm really trying to catch back up. We're taking a brief hiatus while I get married, and I'm going to see if I can, during that downtime, catch us back up to where we are in the campaign, because we're about 4 or 5 episodes ahead at this point. Until then, happy adventuring.